So the topic of today's discussion is streaming and setting in our school. We've been looking at the EEF toolkit and other research to see whether or not we should keep it in our classrooms.
Setting is when pupils with similar levels of attainment are grouped together either for specific lessons on a regular basis or as a whole class, which is streaming. So the assumption is that it will be possible to teach more effectively or efficiently with a narrower range of attainment in a class. It talks about setting and streaming having an overall negative impact for a very low cost based on moderate evidence.
In the Millennium Cohort study, they found that often the lower attaining groups didn't seem to perform as well during setting and streaming, whereas the higher attainers seemed to thrive throughout this. There were also found to be a lot of complaints from parents that often there's a double standard of practice, so the lower abilities didn't seem to be having as much attention from the teachers as they should be.
We can make sure that the lower attainers can progress so they're on a level with the higher attainers. So overall there's a positive progression for both in a setting/streaming environment. We can improve the lower attainers' progress by doing reformative assessment, where we reintroduce prior knowledge, have focused discussion and focused questions. This individualised support will help their progression and overall there will be a balance.
All of this approach depends on the attitude of the teacher, and we need to ensure that they're equipped to perform good quality assessment and be able to differentiate so they can build on the learning of the children in their class. I would suggest therefore we dedicate part of the staff inset training days towards this so that we can ensure that the teachers are equipped to do that.
And found that often the children were aware whether they're in a higher ability or a lower ability table or a higher ability or lower ability set. And there's often a bad stigma attached to their abilities, and this often discourages their learning. It's also spoken about in the EF toolkit that it discourages their confidence and belief that their attainment can be improved.
We can rename tables. For example, instead of table 1 being the lower attainers, it could be the orange table. As the seating arrangement is more subtle, the children would be more comfortable and maybe even more motivated in their learning, so they're more likely to progress.
Flexibility is key. We need to be able to make sure that we're employing it specifically within some lessons as opposed to just all of them regardless of the children's ability. So I think this is especially important when we're reviewing the standard of work that their LAs are achieving in each subject.
Within the classroom setting, often children can actually work better if a lower, for example, is paired up with a higher ability student. So in this case, higher is actually used as the MKO for the lower. Furthermore, this is also supported by Hattie 2012.
Having tables of similar attainment can actually be very beneficial. The theory of subject matter oriental beliefs is more effective than Vygotsky's theory of the MKO. The teacher plays the most crucial role in transmitting knowledge. Therefore, if the teacher plans for a similar attainment children to sit next to each other, it will work out, and make sure that there are certain manipulatives on certain tables that will cater for their learning and development.
So I think this again comes back to employing the flexibility of the teacher and using their experience to differentiate for the class. However, I think we need to ensure that this is looking at the development of each child. In some classes it might work better that we use mixed ability groupings. Murphy Paul was the one who described a protege effect, where a knowledgeable other is able to explain something to someone else who doesn't know as much. They can develop their explanation and justification skills.
Looking at the behaviour of certain children in specific groups. So for example, the lowers often have a lot of behaviour management problems. Often SEN children have shown to be in those groups. Often they'll need a little bit more support.
To resolve the lower attainers from misbehaving, we could create a positive environment. This is easily done and it brings the focus back to learning. As a result, all the children will be on good behaviour and are more likely to progress.
Specifically boosting the self-esteem of the children, making the learning the most important thing in the classroom, so it's more of a challenge. Assessment of this is also going to be vital, so we're going to need to be constantly monitoring the effectiveness of the ability grouping regarding the pupils' engagement and their attitudes to learning.
In conclusion, I feel it's safe to say that setting and streaming has a positive effect on our higher attaining pupils and a lower effect on our lower attaining pupils. And I'd say that We'd have to adapt our teaching strategies within our classroom to benefit the learning of all our pupils.
This benefits our children as they're given the correct attention that they need, that they're helped to advance in their own area, using, for example, the correct manipulatives that they need in problem solving and maths. So this means it doesn't inhibit the learning of any of the other children. So we can tackle this by having staff inset training day where we focus on how we can avoid the negative impacts of setting and streaming by being flexible in our mixed ability groupings and using it depending on the subject and the content.